There are many ways in which we could analyze fiction, from its source, from its writer, and mostly from its purpose. I've went through several conversations with my fellow authors and writers, and the thing that we most likely forget, aka the single most confounding component, is the why of things. Why do we create the way we do? Why do we spend hours upon our time just slaving away at a desktop or a notebook just to find a story that could change many lives? Some write for self indulgence, others for reasons undisclosed from how diverse they are. But at mostly, we all write for something to feel, to think, maybe to simply share. But there's always a cause for each work, and the sooner we realize our purpose, the sharper our stories become, and the more integrity we realize within ourselves in this very abstract yet decades old profession. As for me, I like to look at the classics. I look at works that come from times before technology's enhancements, figuring out why they worked the way they did with the lack of resources people had, and the sociological factors that prevented them from dying down even as the years flew by. A thought came to mind of The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's best works. They were extensive, detailed, and filled to the brim with some of the most excellent and intricate world building the writing world has ever seen. Of course, there are many works of fiction surrounding or inspired by his works, some of those being from his own colleagues, up to much more modern adaptations of high and contemporary fiction and fantasy. A couple of decades before the release of The Lord of the Rings and its series came an edition of detective books written by several different writers, one of them namely Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, an Irish-blooded British writer and physician. He created the character Sherlock Holmes in 1887 for A Study in Scarlet, the first of four novels and 56 short stories about Holmes and Dr. Watson, which ultimately became the two prolific icons in the characterization within crime fiction stories. In simplicity, Doyle wrote about Holmes primarily for financial reasons, as Doyle was a doctor trying to build a medical practice and needed more income. His character was directly inspired by his former medical school professor, Dr. Joseph Bell, whose keen observation and deductive skills were the basis for Holmes' analytical methods. The character's immense popularity also contributed to the creation of more stories, even though Doyle eventually grew tired of writing about him. Although Doyle's reasoning differs from how other writers may think about their work, it's a valid one nonetheless. A very valid one, actually. I've seen it a lot in most of my friends. Many authors of the time went to fame, being involved in gossip and such, but most struggle to make a living as literature has proven itself to be a sort of unstable source of income, especially when it comes to mass preference. It's literally art in its essence, which makes it subjective while it may not be entirely abstract in its construct. The notion that writing has to fit a standard besides grammatical ones in order to fit a certain ideal is sort of paralyzing to the creative process as a whole. At least that's what I think. And hear me out. I might not be completely right, but I do have something to say about this. I want you to understand me here that what I mean isn't enabling half-hearted work to be published just like that, like those Wattpad fictions that you read when you're 13. I mean like seeing potential of art that might not be conventional but serves a good purpose, and taking a chance for it to be published. But this has a number of fallacies, not in the theory itself, but in its practice. Because, I mean, the industry of writing has become this entire system in their own. It's kind of difficult to kind of revamp a system from its very roots. I mean, we've tried before, let's see how that works. But have you ever heard of the term real, recognized real? Of course you have. But that's like what I mean. This goes with fields like teaching as well. We'll need competent, well-versed individuals in their supposed field of expertise to be able to defer which works or students are in which classifications of competency. In the case of publishing, the team of the publishing house itself, or maybe even the literary agents, just need to be aware. And being aware isn't just being aware of what's good and what's not. The basic theory and the basic data set for something to be good or not needs to be determined firsthand. Of course they have a rule book, of course they have a system, but what that system is based on, we have to evaluate. And I think every single publishing house and every single literary agent has their own set of classifications and what they find good. But I'm talking about this in a more sense of finding works that are actually worth publishing and not just following the modern trend. Although that is supposedly good for marketing. Marketability is important. Yes, but if there's no significant question of why the work is important, we'd be losing gifted and wonderful writers before we could even begin to prolong the art of literature itself. In its core, books are entertainment. We can't deny that, but they are also pinnacles of education and knowledge. I think it's kind of fair to give this sort of contemplation for the industry in the present and future, in order for more wonderful books to be published as well. I've heard of the term also, anti-academic, anti-intellectual, like something, in the rise of the current government, and I feel like this has something to contribute to that as well. When we see books like these, not gonna mention what they are, being popular, we can kind of tell the stuff that our people are into right now. Because I'm not saying that these books weren't a thing back then, but they weren't exactly glorified as much as they are right now. This has an entire sociological factor that I'm not going to get into right now, but it is something to be thought about. In my opinion, what makes a good book is the impact that it has on its readers. It turns mundane things into magical things, and that's part of what makes fiction so amazing. In works like Narnia and The Lord of the Rings, you get a glimpse of what humanity can be if man surrendered their ego, and what humanity could be if they did utilize their ego. It's human connection. It's the pivotal need of human experience and human emotion. I might not flesh this out as thoroughly as I want to. It's just a jumble of thoughts that I thought were important, maybe in the consideration of this field. As much as I love it, I'm an author and a writer, and I'm also an artist. I understand how important it is, but I also understand how idealism can consume us to the whole, so maybe I'm not completely correct. Next video, I'm planning to see why people just don't make classic literature anymore. At least not as good. But for now, Operator 14 is tapping out. I'll see you soon.